Hey apes, this is the first part of the PowerPoint for Modern Agriculture and Pesticides, which is Unit 6B. We were supposed to do this in class today, but instead decided to review 6A before you guys had the quiz, and y'all did really well on the quiz, so awesome. I want you guys to take a look at this slide and see what you think is true and what you think is false of it. And then when you start looking down and you're like, yeah, I think so, I think so, I think so, these are actually all true. Same thing with this slide here. Livestock and cattle is a big issue, and we're going to go a lot more into detail, and we're going to watch Food Inc. in class. Cattle produce a lot of methane gas, about 15%. That number might be outdated. Not sure what the exact number is now, but it's a lot. Livestock produce 21 times more waste than humans do, and cattle use more than half of the fresh water withdrawn each year in the US. Okay? We're using a lot of our resources to produce meat for consumption. So this brings us to pesticides. The Green Revolution, you guys know all about it. High input agriculture, more. And the Green Revolution was a success. We were able to grow more food in a smaller space, and we were able to grow it faster. Synthetic fertilizers, chemical pesticides, irrigation, heavy equipment, all of these come with side effects that weren't necessarily thought of when the Green Revolution started. So pests, pollinators, pests, weeds, pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, all things that kill pest organisms. Fungicides kill fungus, herbicides kill plants. 400 million kilograms, 900 million pounds of pesticides are applied in the US each year, and they don't just disappear. Some of them persist, a lot of them move about in the environment, and a lot of them take a long time to break down. This usage is increasing in developing countries as they're going through their own industrial and then green revolutions. We have broad spectrum and narrow spectrum pesticides. Your broad spectrum is basically your insecticide. It's going to kill a whole bunch of different insects. Whereas if you just have something that's very specific to kill stink bugs, that's going to be narrow spectrum. It only kills one specific target species. Broad spectrum is just kind of a blanket, I'm going to kill everything. And that comes with issues. First generation pesticides are inorganic, meaning they don't have that carbon compound made up of a lot of lead and mercury, which bioaccumulate and biomagnify in organisms and in the environment. And then you have these botanicals, which are plant-derived pesticides, nicotine, like from cigarettes, and pyrethrum, which comes from a marigold plant, I believe. Then your second generation pesticides were your synthetic poisons. These were the really crazy pesticides. Your DDT was your first second generation pesticide. Okay. And this was your DDT, dichloro, diphenyl, trichloroethane. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner, they used to have these DDT trucks, the foggers, that would come around. And in the neighborhood, they would spray the lawns to kill mosquitoes to prevent malaria. And if you look at this picture, kids would go and they would run in the fog like a dry ice machine at a party, except for they were literally running in poison. And we just didn't know the side effects of DDT, which has been banned in the US since the early 1970s now. Do you guys remember cats in Borneo? We did that, and or maybe we didn't do that. But basically what happened was they introduced DDT to get rid of malaria, and it caused all of these different unforeseen consequences. Okay. So we have three major groups of insecticides, your chlorinated hydrocarbons. Okay, so they have a carbon atom in there. They also contain chlorine. They're pretty slow to degrade. They're very persistent in the environment. They're banned or largely restricted, and DDT is a big example of this. DDT is banned for use in the US. However, it's still produced in the US, and it's used in a lot of developing countries around the world, because the moral of the story is it's really important to protect people from malaria, and DDT is very useful at killing mosquitoes. It does the job it's intended to. Organophosphates are the most poisonous insecticides. They contain phosphorus, organophosphates. They don't persist as long as chlorinated hydrocarbons, though. And then the carbamates are derived from carbamic acid. We're not going to go much into detail with these, but I want you to know that they're a major group of insecticide. Pesticides are very good. They control lots of disease. Fleas, lice, mosquitoes carry lots of disease. Dengue fever, yellow fever, malaria, Zika, all of these things are carried by mosquitoes. Lyme's disease carried by the deer tick. We have lots of deer in New Jersey. We have lots of deer tick. We have a high incidence of Lyme's disease in New Jersey. And they actually, well, pesticides benefit us because they protect our crops. So pests eat and destroy a third of the world's crops. We are in indirect competition with crops. We are fighting for the same resource. That resource is partitioned. We eat it at a different time. Okay. Farmers save $3 to $5 every dollar they invest in pesticides. So it's a good deal for farmers. Okay. In these areas where you see the dark green, these are areas that malaria is common. Okay. If you look, here's the equator. Whoa. Here's your equator. This is your tropics here. You have lots of rain, which means you have lots of areas for mosquito to breed in. Okay. There we go. But as the more we spray pesticides, the more that these insects and these pests become resistant to it. So pest populations are evolving resistance to pesticides. Some are naturally going to be genetically immune to a pesticide. And after they're sprayed, they survive and they pass those genes that are resistant to these pesticides off to their offspring. So pesticides stop being effective in the current doses that we're spraying. It's kind of like the flu vaccine and the flu. We have a vaccine every single year to prevent the flu, but we need to change that vaccine to be effective towards the current strain of flu, because that flu is evolving and mutating, because that's how these viruses survive. They need to constantly be changing. Okay. So here's a nice little narrative. Your pests attack the crops, then a pesticide is applied. Then most pests are killed, okay? But you see these red guys up here? They were resistant. So now what happens is they breed, and all of these now are not affected, sorry, by the pesticide that's sprayed in the same amount. Okay, so the pesticide has little effect, and now more toxic pesticides need to be developed to kill these organisms. Okay, so we call this the evolutionary arms race. Chemists are increasing this chemical toxicity to compete with these resistant pests, and we call this the pesticide treadmill, because you're doing stuff, you're spraying stuff, you're getting that exercise, but you're in the same exact places where you started. So these pesticides now must be applied more frequently or in larger doses, and their effectiveness decreases, okay, because of this increased genetic resistance. So in addition to this pesticide resistance, the problem with pesticides is they create an imbalance in an ecosystem. So when you spray to kill these insects, it affects birds, rabbits, and organisms all the way up the food chain. Okay? So we have increased our use of pesticides in the US 33 times, okay? 33-fold increase in pesticide use since the 1940s. But our crop loss has changed steady, okay? Our crop loss hasn't decreased at all, okay? So you can see here in this little chart on the bottom, okay? In 2006, 13, 12.5, 12 for weeds, okay? This is the percentage of crops lost annually to pests. In 1942, okay, it was a bit less, 7.1, 10.5, 13.8. But these numbers really haven't changed. Okay. They create new pests. After DDT was sprayed to control another pest, these oranges, okay, or lemons, developed a new disease because it killed the good predators. The new pest was able to emerge because its predators had been killed by the spraying of this DDT. Okay. If you look at this chart, the economic injury level is all the way down here, this dotted line, and those untreated trees stayed below that level, okay? But the red scale density of the trees that were sprayed with DDT increased dramatically. We also have bioaccumulation and biomagnification up the food chain, and you guys know all about that. Okay? And here you could see the eggs were greatly affected because it affects the endocrine system. You remember intersex in fish? We were talking about that when we were doing HIPCO. Okay. They move in the environment. These pesticides don't don't stay where they are applied. They move through the soil, the water, and the air. Okay? Human effects: short term, nausea, vomiting, headaches. Long term, okay, chronic exposure to pesticides, damage to the nervous system, so many different cancers and nervous system problems and endocrine problems. Okay. Long-term effects, so many different cancers, sterility, miscarriages, birth defects. Your immune system decreases. There's a possible connection to Parkinson's disease. There may be links to Asperger's and to autism and all different sorts of learning disabilities as well. Okay. And the biggest thing is our bees. We depend on insects to pollinate crops. We kill them off, we kill off our pollinators. So some are really, really vital. And we have pollination by hummingbirds, bats, and insects, and most notably, honeybees. So honeybees pollinate more than 100 crops. So a third of the US diet, a third of our diet that we eat is pollinated by these tiny little insects. So native honeybee populations have plummeted because of something called CCD, or colony collapse disorder. So to conserve bees, we need to reduce or eliminate pesticide use. We need to plant flowering plants. We need to enact legislation that protects our natural resources and protects our bees. Okay? So colony collapse disorder is basically the majority of worker bees in a colony disappear. Okay? Agricultural crops rely on these bees. So in the 6 years leading up to 2013, more than 10 million beehives were lost to colony collapse disorder. And we don't know what causes it. It's been linked to certain pesticides, and literally bees can't find their way back to the hives and they die. Okay. The family of pesticides called neonicotinoids may be having caused colony collapse disorder, and there's more research that's coming out on that now. Infections, malnutrition, various pathogens, genetic factors, immunodeficiencies, loss of habitats are other reasons linked to colony collapse disorder. But there are lots of strong ties coming in now to pesticides. There are lots of alternatives to pesticides, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that later on in the week. Tomorrow, you're going to get your study guides, you're going to get your notes, we're going to meet in the computer lab so that you guys can work on your your pesticide project for your third marking period formal grade. So don't forget to go to the media center tomorrow, and have a good night.